Well, in our last class, we were reading the description of Mahakali, and if you remember, we had read out a passage from the Mother, where she explains about true spirituality. Not only true spirituality, if I remember it rightly, worshipping the different gods and goddesses, where she explains that it really doesn't matter to which form of the divine you worship, because what is important is your utter sincerity and your absolute surrender. So if we can give ourselves to any form, including, as we explained, to a form called your own Guru, you will realize you will reach the divine or your inner being. And in one of the readings that I read this morning, Sri Aurobindo writes that first and foremost, it is the realization of the psychic that is important. He says, until then, something like that, I don't remember the exact words, don't even think of the supermind or other realizations. He says, of course, he implies that, maybe when he wrote those letters or answers, there was a bit of a too much talk of the supermind and the other regions, spiritualization, etc. So I felt Sri Aurobindo came down pretty strong to say, what is important is the psychic realization. The rest of it almost, don't talk about it, don't think about it. I mean, he has put things in a perfect emphasis. And years later, when the mother had left her own body, that's exactly in a similar manner, Nolnida also gave us a message to say that do not talk about all those higher regions of supermind, overmind. Do not think about all that. Do the first thing first. That is, start with the yamas and niyamas of this life. What ought to be done, what ought not to be done. So all this kind of a big talk was not much encouraged. So it is quite unnecessary, if I can say, to discuss, and of course intellectual, mental discussion one can have, more for the sake of a clarity, I suppose. But when it comes to sadhana, what is the utmost important thing is to realize and to bring forth one's own psychic being. Well, so here what we see in these descriptions, that's what, in fact, sorry to go back, that's what I was pretty much touched in our reading of the last class, where the Mother too is really emphasizing not on Kali or Lakshmi or Maheshwari or this or that. The whole onus is on the disciple, on the devotee. How much you give, how much you surrender. So let us not kind of emphasize Sri Aurobindo is the supramental avatar, Krishna is the overmental avatar, Ram is the mental avatar, and therefore I am a disciple of a greater divinity, greater avatarhood. I think in sadhana, those things do not matter much. Of course, I would still add that when it comes to transformation of your outer being, yes, there is the specific role of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. But as far as one's realization of the psychic being or the divine consciousness is concerned, the Mother is pretty emphatic as you saw. She says, worship any god, any goddess, any guru, anybody, but do it. Do it completely. With that, these are the two words, if you remember, sincerity and surrender. So if one does that, even I would say, without even a form, if you do it to the sun god or to the moon god or to nature, you will have the same realization. Well, that was the passage that we read last time. Now coming back to this description of Kali, I said I have one more reading from the Mother, and it's a very significant one regarding Kali Puja. So I'd like to read it before I take up the next aspect. This reading is from Collected Works of the Mother, Volume 7, page 370. The question is, Sweet Mother, has that Chaldean legend which you have written any relation with Kali Puja? Well, what's that legend? Let me read it out so you understand its significance. That's on page 378 of the same volume. Long, long ago, in the dry land which is now Arabia, a divine being incarnated upon earth to awaken in it the supreme love. As expected, it was persecuted by men, misunderstood, suspected, pursued. Mortally wounded by its assailants, it wanted to die quietly in solitude in order to be able to accomplish its work, and being pursued, it ran away. Suddenly, in the vast desert land, there appeared a small pomegranate bush. The Saviour crept in under the low branches to leave its body in peace, and immediately the bush spread out miraculously. It grew higher, larger, became deep and thick, so that when the pursuers passed by, they did not even suspect that the one whom they were chasing was hidden there, and they went their way. While drop by drop the sacred blood fell, fertilizing the soil, the bush was covered with marvelous flowers, scarlet, large, crowded with petals, innumerable drops of blood. These are the flowers which express and contain for us the Divine's love. So in this context, the Mother is explaining that what has this tale got to do with Kali Puja? Mother's answer on page 370. Yes, my child, because on Kali Puja day I always distribute the flowers of divine love. For Kali is the most loving of all the aspects of Mahashakti. Hers is the most active and most powerful love. And that is why every year I distribute the petals of Divine's love on Kali's day. And so, naturally, this explanation of why these flowers were chosen to express the Divine's love is a sufficient explanation. Mother, who was this man you have spoken about? Mother's answer, who told you that it was a man? I haven't said whether it was a man or a woman. I took care to put only a divine being. Who? The question is, who is it? It's a prehistoric story, so you cannot find any information about it. It isn't written anywhere. There are no written documents. Haven't you any questions to ask on what we read today? Well, that is again different questions, so I'll leave it at that. So that's regarding what all I could find on Kali and Mahakali we have read. So we will continue, but there's one more clarification before we leave this paragraph. I think we had read, as I said, to the middle of the paragraph, but let me read it once again from the middle. Indifference, negligence, and sloth in the divine work she cannot bear, and she smites awake at once with sharp pain, if need be, the untimely slumberer and the loiterer. The impulses that are swift and straight and frank, the movements that are unreserved and absolute, the aspiration that mounts in flame are the motion of Mahakali. Her spirit is tameless. Her vision and will are high and far-reaching, like the flight of an eagle. Her feet are rapid on the upward way, and her hands are outstretched to strike and to succor. There is precisely a question based on this line here. Someone asked Sri Aurobindo, that was in 1936. Question. This is from this volume 25, page 76. Question. In The Mother, it is said about the Mahakali power of the Mother that her hands are outstretched to strike and to succor. What is meant by strike here? Answer. It expresses her general action in the world. She strikes at the asuras. She strikes also at everything that has to be got rid of or destroyed, at the obstacles to the sadhana, etc. I may say that the Mother never uses the Mahakali power. In your case, not the Mahakali pressure. Then going down, there's another sentence where we see, for she too is the Mother, and her love is as intense as her wrath, and she has a deep and passionate kindness. When she is allowed to intervene in her strength, then in one moment are broken like things without consistence the obstacles that immobilize or the enemies that assail the seeker. Well, on the same page, page 76 and 77, there's another question directly referring to this sentence. So, somebody asked Sri Aurobindo in 1933 about the Mother's Mahakali aspect. It is said in the Mother, when she is allowed to intervene in her strength, then in one moment are broken like things without consistence the obstacles that immobilize or the enemies that assail the seeker. How is this intervention of the Mahakali force felt? Answer. It is felt as if something swift, sudden, decisive, and imperative. When it intervenes, it has a kind of divine or supramental sanction behind it and is like a fiat against which there is no appeal. What is done cannot be reversed or undone. The adverse forces may try, may even touch or invade, but they retire baffled, and it is seen as soon as they withdraw that the past ground has remained intact. It is felt even in the attack. Also, the difficulties that were strong before it touched by this fiat lose their power, their verisimilitude destroyed, or are weak shadows that come only to flicker and fade away. I say aloud, because this supreme action of Mahakali is comparatively rare. The action of the other powers or a partial action of Mahakali is more common. Well, I think that tells us enough. In both the letters, Sri Aurobindo is telling us that the action of Mahakali power is pretty rare, both on the individual level as well as on the collective level. Because maybe it's too much of a force for us. So, she says, action of other powers is more common than the action of Mahakali. To continue with the reading, if her anger is dreadful to the hostile and the vehemence of her pressure painful to the weak and timid, she is loved and worshipped by the great, the strong and the noble. For they feel that her blows beat what is rebellious in their material into strength and perfect truth, hammer straight what is wry and perverse, and expel what is impure or defective. But for her, what is done in a day might have taken centuries. Without her, Ananda might be wide and grave, or soft and sweet and beautiful, but would lose the flaming joy of its most absolute intensities. To knowledge, she gives a conquering might, brings to beauty and harmony a high and mounting movement, and imparts to the slow and difficult labor after perfection an impetus that multiplies the power and shortens the long way. Well, I suppose you have noted here her contribution to other parts, other aspects. To knowledge is Maheshwari, beauty and harmony, Mahalakshmi, and the last one Mahalakshmi, Mahasaraswati. So to each one of them, she contributes this intensity. Basically, as he puts it beautifully here, without her, Ananda might be wide and grave or soft and sweet and beautiful, but lose the flaming joy of its most absolute intensities. I mean, it's difficult to understand or to imagine, but you can see what it means. I mean, there is a great intensity, I suppose, we can't explain it further than what it says, the flaming joy of its most absolute intensities. Nothing can satisfy her that falls short of the supreme ecstasies, the highest heights, the noblest aims, the largest vistas. Therefore, with her is the victorious force of the divine, And it is by grace of her fire and passion and speed, if the great achievement can be done now rather than hereafter. Well, now we'll take up the third aspect of the mother. And you see, we have not only a shift of personality, but you'll read here almost a different language. I mean, that's what is beautiful about these passages. Each passage is suited to the personality of the mother. So when you're describing Mahakali, you must have seen, I mean, it really demands a kind of a study in literature to see what are the verbs, nouns, adjectives that Sri Aurobindo uses while describing Mahakali. And look at his words and sentences when we come to Mahalakshmi. Wisdom and force are not the only manifestations of the Supreme Mother. There is a subtler mystery of her nature, and without it, wisdom and force would be incomplete things, and without it, perfection would not be perfect. I mean, it really requires great imagination to understand this phrase, perfection would not be perfect. Above them is the miracle of eternal beauty, an unseizable secret of divine harmonies, the compelling magic of an irresistible universal charm and attraction that draws and holds things and forces and beings together and obliges them to meet and unite, that a hidden Ananda may play from behind the veil and make of them its rhythms and its figures. This is the power of Mahalakshmi, and there is no aspect of the divine Shakti more attractive to the heart of embodied beings. Maheshwari can appear too calm and great and distant for the littleness of earthly nature to approach or contain her. Mahakali too swift and formidable for its weakness to bear. But all turn with joy and longing to Mahalakshmi, for she throws the spell of the intoxicating sweetness of the divine. To be close to her is a profound happiness, and to feel her within the heart is to make existence a rapture and a marvel. Grace and charm and tenderness flow out from her like light from the sun, and wherever she fixes her wonderful gaze or lets fall the loveliness of her smile, the soul is seized and made captive and plunged into the depths of an unfathomable bliss. Magnetic is the touch of her hands, and their occult and delicate influence refines mind and life and body, and where she presses her feet course miraculous streams of an entrancing Ananda. I think it's sheer poetry when you read that. Well, there is beautiful clarification in this comments, Mother's comments. Turn to page 191, and there is a question asked by a disciple. Sweet Mother, I didn't understand this. This is the power of Mahalakshmi, And there's no aspect of the divine Shakti more attractive to the heart of embodied beings. That means men. It is another way of saying human beings upon the earth, beings upon earth. There are also, it means animals also. She is very, very loving towards animals, and animals love her very much. Even the most ferocious ones become very gentle with her. And that is why instead of using the words human beings, he has used embodied beings, beings with a body upon earth. Silence. Questions? Sweet Mother, I did not understand. She throws the spell of the intoxicating sweetness of the divine. Mother, did not understand? Because you don't have a poetic mind. So, it is a poetic image to express. You must not understand these things with a positive mind. You must have a little feeling for the harmony of words and phrases. Well, that is regarding these two lines here. And we see there is one more line where she says, she is explaining about Mahasaraswati. Of course, I'll take it up next time. Yeah, I think we don't have any more clarification on that paragraph. But just to add a little personal note, I think this is exactly what I remember her, seeing her in my childhood. I mean, these lines especially, she throws the spell of the intoxicating sweetness of the divine. Then that's why now I can understand why we used to call her Dusme. The words are wonderful there, intoxicating sweetness. See, as children, we didn't have much of this rational mind. So it was the heart that was really attracted to her. And the most prominent element in her personality was definitely that of sweetness. And to be close to her is a profound happiness. Well, I have often told in my talks, yes, perhaps that was the happiness that we were looking for during the day. Just trying to be close to her, may it be in the balcony darshan or when we ran towards the samadhi, and to see her once again arranging the flowers on the first floor window, or running after her when she was playing tennis. I think this is what now I feel was the inner quest, just to be close to her. We didn't understand philosophy, we didn't expect anything, we didn't demand anything from her, but just a physical closeness what was important. And now I understand what Sri Aurobindo is explaining. To be close to her is a profound happiness. And to feel her within the heart is to make existence a rapture and a marvel. Well, this I suppose is reserved for our older days, or when we have gone within. This also she used to say, and she had written to me also in a couple of letters, that to feel her within the heart. Because as Sri Aurobindo also explained, you see, I'm trying to analyze myself as more a loud thinking, as we say. You see, as children, yes, we wanted to be close to her, go around her. But there were adults who were complaining to Sri Aurobindo that when they went to the mother, she did not even smile at them, she did not look at them, this kind of. So all these complaints, Sri Aurobindo would say, no, it is the inner thing that is important. You have to feel her presence within. And I think as we grow older, we understand that to feel her within the heart is to make existence a rapture and a marvel. I think the be-all and end-all of all this sadhana is just this, to feel her within the heart, very close.